Hi. I have a disgusting amount of books on my TBR, and to help with that, I put together a list of the top 24 books and series that I want to read in 2024. I put together a list that's a mix of new releases, backlisted books, some classics, and just books that have been on my TBR for a really long time that I finally want to read this year. I actually kind of cheated a little bit, and I have 24 books and then a separate list for the series. The series that I want to complete aren't necessarily a part of the 24 books that I have. There are additional 6 series that I want to get to, but I just decided to put all of it in the same video. But these are the ones that I'm definitely trying to prioritize for this year. I've broken up these books into different categories by genre, and we'll get to all of the series in the end. I'll start with all of the standalone novels that I want to get to first. We'll start with the new releases. The first book on this list is, of course, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. I don't know a single person who isn't anticipating this book for this year. I think it's probably going to be like the #1 release of the year. I was going to reread Crescent City 1 and Crescent City 2 before this came out, but I got like 50 pages into the first book and I was like, okay, I would rather spend my time reading something that I haven't read yet or a brand new book rather than rereading this. I found some websites that have really in-depth recaps, and I know a few booktubers have even made their own recap videos of what happens in the first 2 books. I might just, read or watch a recap, and then hopefully that'll get me up to speed and jog my memory, because I honestly have forgotten so much that has happened, but I just don't have it in me to reread these like huge ass books to get to this new one. But this is definitely one of the books that I'm most excited for coming out this year. The next 2 releases are from my favorite traditionally published romance authors of all time, and that is Abby Jimenez and Emily Henry. Abby Jimenez is coming out with Just for the Summer, and Emily Henry is coming out with Funny Story. These are 2 very popular romance authors, and I think a lot of romance readers also have this as like top priorities for new releases this year. I'm part of that hype. I love these 2 authors. These are the only 2 auto-buy authors that come out with traditionally published romances that I even read these days, because I think traditionally published contemporary romances, a lot of them are not good in my opinion. I like indie romance books better, but these 2, I don't know, they put crack in their pages. Their books are so good. I think these are also the only 2 authors whose entire backlist I've read. Like, I've read every single book that these 2 authors have written, which I don't think I can say for I think a lot of the authors that I've read. But I love these 2 authors. I'm really excited for these new releases that they're coming out with, and they're both coming out on my birthday month. Yeah, excited for those 2. So those are the 3 releases that I definitely am prioritizing for 2024. The rest of the books are all going to be backlisted books or books that have already been out. The first genre that I have are classics and cult classic novels that I can't believe I haven't even read yet. The first classic that I want to read is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. One of my reading goals this year is to read at least 2 classics. This is going to be my reintroduction into classics. I haven't really read classics since high school, but this year I really want to get back into it, and I've heard nothing but good things about this book, and this is one book that is always recommended. So this is on my list of classics to read for this year. The next classic that I have is Animal Farm by George Orwell. This is really short, and I didn't realize it was that short, which means I probably will be able to get through it pretty quickly. And again, I've heard nothing but great things about this. I know this is a very, very popular like classic book that everyone's read, except for me, but that will change this year. The next book is more of a cult classic that everyone has read, except for me, and it was also adapted into a movie. I also want to watch the movie after I read this to see how well it was adapted, and that is The Princess Bride. Like I said, this is a cult classic book. I think everyone and their mom has read this. I actually don't know much about this book or the movie, except for that it's very fun and adventurous, and I think there's also some romance in it. I could be wrong, but I feel like there is. It is named The Princess Bride, but we'll see. The next cult classic book that I want to read is actually The Kite Runner. I know it's a very emotional, gut-wrenching historical fiction novel that everyone has read, very raved about. It has incredible reviews. I don't read a lot of historical fiction because I'm always emotionally devastated by the end of it. I can really only take that genre in doses, but I feel like this is going to be the historical fiction book that's going to ruin me this year. That's totally fine with me. That's totally fine with me. All right, the next genre is going to be all of the fantasy and sci-fi books that I want to read this year. The first book is A Spear That Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. He is an author that I read last year. I read The Vanishing Birds or The Vanished Birds by him last year. I really enjoyed it. I really loved his writing. This is his newest release. I don't remember if it came out last year or the year before, but it is his newest release. And literally every booktuber or bookstagrammer that has read this book, nothing but good reviews. If I enjoyed his first book, I'm assuming I'm going to enjoy this one. The next two books are both sci-fi novellas. That is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers and All Systems Red by Martha Wells. I started to get into sci-fi last year. I read Project Hail Mary last year, and that was a chunker to get through, especially since I haven't read a lot of sci-fi. I should have started with these two novellas. A lot of people that have recommended books for people who are just starting to get into sci-fi recommend these books to start off with, and I didn't do that. No. I went headfirst into the deep end with Project Hail Mary. I'm a dumb bitch. I'm not a scientific person at all, and there were a lot of terms and just scientific things that happened in that book that I was completely lost in. I still really enjoy that book. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars. I really, really, really loved it. But I'm gonna scale it back and read these two novellas to give myself a good foundation for sci-fi, because I think that's what I was missing and what I was lacking. I want to give these two novellas a try, and we'll see how it goes. The next book that I want to read this year that I cannot believe I didn't read last year is Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. M.L. Wang wrote my favorite fantasy standalone of all time, The Sword of Kaigen. Love that book. Emotionally damaging, world building amazing, plot gripping, characters
ruined me.
Love, 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 love. So M.L. Wang came out with Blood Over Bright Haven last year. I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't read this book last year when it came out, because like I said, The Sword of Kaigen is one of my favorite books of all time. All I have to say is I'm getting to this book this year if it kills me. Right, the next fantasy book that I want to read is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. The Cosmere is very intimidating to me, and I want to get into it.
Yes, I do.
But I can't commit to any of the series just yet. Like, I'm not in the right mindset for that yet. So in the meantime, I want to read the standalones that he has. I want to start off with Warbreaker to kind of ease my way into the Cosmere. I did read the first book of the Mistborn trilogy like years ago, but I never continued with the series because, like I said, I just wasn't in the right mindset for it. I just wasn't mentally and emotionally invested in it just yet. I'm hoping reading Warbreaker will get me into that groove. You know what I mean? I think I'll definitely enjoy this book, but yeah, like I said, this is sort of going to be my introduction into the Cosmere, like very, very lightly though. I'm treading lightly, you know? The last fantasy book that I want to read is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mitsuki Tsujimura. A lot of people have said that this has Studio Ghibli vibes, which I am all for. I don't normally read books where the main character is a child because I'm not a huge fan of that, and I know the main character of this book is a child, but I've heard really amazing things about this, so I think I can put that aside. And I love Studio Ghibli. I mean, who fucking doesn't? I'm excited to read this book for those vibes and those vibes alone. Okay, the next genre is going to be all of the fiction books that I want to read. We're starting off with Okay Days by Jenny Mustard. I love Jenny Mustard. I love all the content that she creates. When she announced that she was writing a book, I was like, yes, queen, give it to me. She's a child-free woman, and she said that one of the characters in this book is child-free, and there are so few books that are published where a main character is child-free, and so I'm so excited for this book. The only problem is I cannot find it anywhere. I think it's only published in Europe. I can't find it in my library. I have never seen it in any bookstore that I've gone to, and on Amazon there's like a 2-month wait time for it to be shipped. I need to read this, and I need to read it now. I'm desperate to read this book. The next book that I want to read is Penance by Eliza Clark. I read Boy Parts last year, and girl, I ate that shit up. I support women's wrongs. That book, iconic. I love Eliza Clark's writing. I believe this came out actually right after I finished Boy Parts. I meant to get to it last year, but I didn't end up getting to it. Top of my list this year. I want to read it soon. I think this is more of a mystery thriller. I'm gonna eat it up. If Eliza Clark writes it, I'm gonna read it. The next book that I want to read for this year is Heaven by Miko Kawakami. I've heard nothing but amazing things about Miko Kawakami's books. I see her books everywhere on Bookstagram. Any account that I follow that's more of a lit fic account, Miko Kawakami is everywhere. I heard that Heaven is very emotionally damaging, tragic, and that's obviously all I read. All right, the next book that I want to read in the fiction category is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. I believe this is a book about a group of Black women living in England. Jack Edwards recommends this book, and anytime Jack Edwards recommends a book, I'm gonna eat it up. I'm gonna eat it up. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The next book is also a very popular Bookstagram book. And yes, you know, I'm easily influenced, okay? I don't know what to tell you, but I've seen this book everywhere. It has a really eye-catching cover. I heard it's about marriage and love, but not necessarily romance, which I'm into. That is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. Look at this cover, obsessed. Besides that, I don't really know much about it, but all of the Lit Fit girlies are reading this, and again, I want to know what the hype is about. Right, the last fiction book that I have on my list is America Is Not the Heart by Elaine Castillo. Elaine Castillo is a Filipino author, and this story is about a Filipino immigrant who moves to the Bay Area, which is where I'm from, and I'm excited to read this because there are not that many books written by Filipino authors or that represent Filipino people. I want to read more about my people because growing up I never read books that represented me. The thing is too, I haven't really seen many reviews or many people talk about it, which I think is a crime. I haven't even read it yet, but I think it's a crime. I'm sure I'm gonna love it. I'm sure it's gonna feel like a piece of home. Okay, the next category is romance. Would it really be a video that I'm making without romance? There aren't that many on this list because I read romance all the time, and I usually read whatever I want with romance right away because it's a very easy genre for me to get into. I only have 3 books in this category, the first being Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I love everything this woman has written. I know she's a very polarizing author. You either love her or you hate her. I'm part of the club that is obsessed with her. This, again, like the author, has very polarizing reviews. People either love it or hate it. I'm sure I'm gonna love it. The next book is You and Me by Tal Bauer. Tal Bauer, not only is he my favorite romance author, but he's one of my favorite romance authors of all time. He writes the best romance, and every book that I've read by him so far, I think I've read 3, I've given 5 stars. Ugh, he's so good. You and Me is his most recent release, and I want more of Tal Bauer. I'm gonna try to read all of Tal Bauer's books this year because his books are just everything. Everything. I love it. The last romance book I have is Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. I haven't read anything by Pam Godwin yet. I've heard nothing but great things about her books. This is a dark romance with pirates in it. And girl, if there's one thing that I love in this world, is pirates, okay? I've never read a dark romance with pirates in it. I'm excited for this to be my first. The next genre that I have is mystery thriller / horror. I'm trying to get more into these genres. The first book that I have is Confessions by Kane Minato. The premise of this book sounds insane. It's this woman who's a teacher and she takes out revenge on students that bullied her daughter, which we support women's wrongs. I think this was adapted into a movie. I need to read this and then I need to watch that movie. And then the last book on my 24 out of 2024 to read this year is Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I read The Hacienda by this author last year, loved it, ate it up. This takes place in the 1800s in Mexico and it has vampires. Bitch, say less. Those were all the top 24 like standalone novels that I want to read. Now I'm going to talk about the series that I want to read. The first of these series being the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I actually got like 100 pages into this first book, Assassin's Apprentice, last year, and I softly DNF'd it because the pacing was so slow. But some of the people that love this, I've reached out to and I've said, does it get better? Like, does the plot go anywhere? And they're like, yes, I know it's slow, but you just gotta stick through it and keep going and it'll get so much better. And everyone loves Robin Hobb. I wanna be part of that. I'm giving this a second go. I'm planning on listening to the audiobook and hoping maybe that catches my interest a little bit more. The #1 series that I wanna complete this year is this trilogy. The next series that I want to read and complete this year is The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. This is YA, so I'm very skeptical about that because I don't really read YA anymore, but like this has a cult following. Like people have gotten tattoos from this book, and every booktuber that I've watched that's like super popular, they love this book. So like, again, I want to know what the hype is. I want to read it. The next series that I want to read and complete for this year is The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I've never read this series, but I watched, I think like the first 3 or 4 seasons of the TV show that was adapted from this book, and I was obsessed with that show. King Margot stan to this day. I was in a bookstore and I saw this and I was like, wait, I never actually read that book. book, but I remember loving the show. There's only 3 books and they were somehow able to create 5 seasons out of it. I don't know how accurate the show is to the books, so I want to read these books to find out. And also, I remember loving that world and loving the characters. I want to be immersed back in that world, but through the books this time. And then I'm probably going to rewatch the show after I finish this trilogy. Okay, the next series that I want to read is the Green Creek series by TJ Klune, which starts with Wolf Song. This is a paranormal romance series, I believe, that has werewolves in it. I'm ready to get into a paranormal romance again. I haven't read a paranormal romance that I've enjoyed in the longest time. I also heard it's gay, which that's my shit. So the next series that I want to read is the Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante. This is the first book, My Brilliant Friend. I read The Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante last year and absolutely loved it. Her writing is fantastic. Actually, the reason why I even heard about Elena Ferrante is because Olivia Blake said in an interview, she was asked if she could recommend one book for the rest of her life, what would it be? And she said, I can't just recommend one, I have to recommend a series, and it was this series. So I was like, if Olivia Blake loves it, and I love Olivia Blake, like, I'm gonna love this. I'm gonna read it. Top priority for this year, I need to finish this series by the end of the year. All right, the last series that I have that I want to read and finish this year is kind of a controversial one. Not controversial, but like, you either hate this series or you love this series. But if you really hate it, you really hate it. And if you really love it, you really love it. And that is the Magnolia Park series by Jessa Hastings. Did I buy all 4 books that are already out in the original covers just because I love the covers? Yes, I did. All I know about this series is that people compare it to Gossip Girl, but in London. I loved Gossip Girl, the books and the show. It was trashy, messy, toxic, chaotic, and iconic. If it's anything like Gossip Girl and the people are right in comparing it to Gossip Girl, then I'm probably gonna eat this up. Like, I'm probably gonna love it. The only thing with comparing books to books, movies, or series that are already out is that then my expectation for that is like super high, because Gossip Girl, she can't be dethroned. You know what I mean? I'm curious to see how this compares to it and just like what the hype is about this, because bitch, this series is everywhere. Book Talk, Bookstagram, BookTube, this is everywhere. And some of my favorite booktubers who don't even really read a lot of romance love this book. And so I'm like, what? That's crazy. But I have to say, the covers are iconic. I love the covers. And I'm happy I got the original covers, because the new covers that came out are absolute garbage. Okay, so those are the top 24 books and series that I want to read for 2024. I really hope I get to these books, because it's been a long time coming for some of these books and series. I want to film a video at the end of the year to see which ones I actually get to. So fingers crossed I get to every single one of them. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!